What if I told you the enemy ruining your life isn't your boss, isn't society, and isn't even your parents? It's you, or more precisely, it's the version of you that you refuse to see. Carl Jung warned that, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. And Freud, well, he agreed, saying that the repressed always returns. Monks? They've been warning about the inner demons for centuries. Different languages, different worlds, but all three point to the same truth. If you don't face your shadows will consume you. You should learn the upcoming wisdom and try to live by these 5 rules of life. The last rule will show you the way to make your life unrecognizable for the better. Rule number 1, face your shadows. This is not self-help fluff. It's not about positive thinking or manifesting better vibes. It's about staring at the ugliest, most inconvenient truths about yourself and refusing to look away. The anger you deny, the envy you bury, the selfishness you disguise as kindness, this is your shadow. And no matter how much you hide it, it leaks out in your relationships, your decisions, your failures. Carl Jung was obsessed with the shadow. He said that the shadow is the part of ourselves we exile because it doesn't fit our self-image. You think of yourself as kind, so you deny your cruelty. You think of yourself as disciplined, so you hide your laziness. But these buried traits don't disappear, they act out behind your back. Jung warned that people who refuse to face their shadow become hypocrites, preaching morality while secretly corrupt, appearing strong while secretly weak. He insisted that real growth begins only when you admit, yes, I am capable of the very darkness I despise in others. Facing the shadow, Jung believed, is the birth of true individuality. Because only when you integrate the worst in you can you trust the best in you. Freud, despite all the jokes about him, was crystal clear about repression. He argued that when you push unwanted thoughts and desires out of awareness, they don't vanish. They return disguised. The man who represses his rage finds it leaking out as sarcasm, as ulcers, as anxiety attacks. The woman who represses her sexuality may dream of it every night, or lash out at others for being indecent. Freud called this the return of the repressed. In his clinical practice, he saw over and over again, people aren't destroyed by their demons, but by their refusal to face them. He and Jung eventually split, but on this point they fully agreed. Denial is poison. Facing the truth is the antidote. Now let's shift from European psychology to the monastery. Buddhist monks describe the mind as a battlefield where Mara, the tempter, the demon, constantly appears. But here's the key. Monks don't kill Mara. They invite him in, sit with him, offer him tea. Why? Because resisting him makes him stronger. Pretending he's not there makes him sneakier. Only by acknowledging him can they dissolve his power. In Zen traditions, this practice is called sitting with your demons. Instead of running away, you bring full awareness to your anger, your greed, your fear. Not to indulge them, but to see them clearly, and in that clarity they lose their grip. See how strangely aligned these 3 are? Jung says, integrate the shadow. Freud says, stop repressing. Monks say, sit with your demons. Different methods, same core truth. The parts of yourself you fear are not the enemy. Ignoring them is. Now here's the uncomfortable part. Facing your shadow is brutal. It means admitting you're not as noble as you pretend. But if you dare to face it, you gain an unshakable kind of freedom. And that freedom opens the door to the next rule, one that explains why modern life keeps us restless, addicted, and never satisfied. Why do we live in a world where people have everything and still feel empty? We scroll endlessly. We buy things we don't need. We chase relationships that don't satisfy us. And yet, the hunger never stops. Freud called it the death drive. Jung called it a spiritual starvation. Monks? They've been saying it for centuries. Desire is a fire that never goes out. The more you feed it, the bigger it burns. So rule number 2, detach from endless desire. This doesn't mean you have to sell everything you own and live in a cave, but it does mean recognizing that modern society is built on keeping you hooked. Your phone is engineered to keep you scrolling. Ads are designed to keep you comparing. The economy thrives not when you're content, but when you're restless. And here's the truth no one wants to hear. The system doesn't care if you're miserable as long as you keep consuming. Jung believed that the endless chase for more is actually a symptom of something deeper, the loss of connection to the self. He warned that when we ignore our inner life, we try to fill the void with outer things: money, power, validation. But the unconscious doesn't accept cheap substitutes. He called this psychic inflation. The person who gains status or wealth but still feels hollow inside. Why? Because they've mistaken substitutes for the real work of individuation, becoming whole by uniting the conscious and unconscious. For Jung, detachment from endless desire wasn't about renouncing life. It was about turning inward to discover what the soul actually craves: meaning, not dopamine. Freud took a darker angle. He believed human beings are driven by two forces: eros, the drive for life, pleasure, connection, and thanatos, the drive for death, destruction, self-sabotage. Desire for Freud wasn't just about pleasure, it was also about compulsion. We repeat toxic relationships, destructive habits, endless cycles of chasing and crashing because we're secretly ruled by forces we don't understand. He observed that the patient who endlessly seeks love is often trying to repair something broken in childhood. The one obsessed with achievement may be running from a deep sense of inadequacy. In Freud's eyes, the problem wasn't desire itself, but unconscious desire. Desires we don't question end up controlling us. Monks, of course, cut through this with a blade of simplicity. The Buddha's first noble truth is that life contains suffering, and the second is that suffering is caused by attachment to craving. Desire itself is not evil. Wanting food, love, or safety is natural. But endless desire, the constant grasping for more, is the engine of misery. Monks train to notice desire rising in the mind and let it pass like clouds. They practice renunciation not as punishment, but as freedom. When you no longer need the next hit, the next like, the next possession, you experience peace. A Zen saying puts it perfectly: when you realize nothing is lacking, the whole world belongs to you. So Jung says, endless desire is a symptom of disconnection from your inner self. Freud says, endless desire is unconscious compulsion replaying old wounds. Monks say, endless desire is the cause of suffering and letting go is the cure. Together they reveal a shocking truth. The modern addiction to more is not progress, it's a trap. The phone in your hand, the endless scroll, the shopping cart full of stuff you'll forget about in a week. All of it feeds the illusion that happiness is out there somewhere. But the very chase is what keeps it forever out of reach. Detaching from endless desire doesn't mean rejecting ambition. It means seeing through the illusion that the next hit of pleasure will save you. And when you stop chasing illusions, you finally have the courage to do something harder, to look reality in the face. And that takes us directly to the next rule, one that's perhaps the most brutally honest of all. Accept suffering as the path. Here's the truth nobody wants to face. Your suffering isn't a mistake. It isn't bad luck, and it isn't proof that life is unfair. It's the doorway. Jung warned that there is no coming to consciousness without pain. Freud believed unprocessed suffering festers into lifelong neuroses. And monks? They say suffering is the teacher, the most honest one you'll ever meet. Modern society has built an empire on avoiding pain. We have painkillers for the body, distractions for the mind, and endless entertainment to keep us from being alone with ourselves. But what if avoiding suffering is the very thing that keeps us weak? What if pain, not comfort, is the only path to growth? Jung was ruthless about this. Suffering is unavoidable, and trying to bypass it only guarantees a shallow existence. He called suffering the suffering of becoming, the painful birth of the self. Think of the shadow, all the parts of yourself you've denied, repressed, or been ashamed of. Meeting that shadow is painful. It's humiliating. But Jung insisted it's the only way to become whole. He wrote, The acceptance of oneself is the essence of the whole moral problem and the epitome of a whole outlook on life. To Jung, pain was not punishment. It was proof that you were breaking the shell of your old identity. Freud's entire clinical career was built on one observation: people run from pain. He noticed that patients who refused to face their suffering, childhood trauma, repressed desires, guilt, ended up haunted by it anyway. The unprocessed pain came back as anxiety, phobias, compulsions. His famous phrase, "Unexpressed emotions will never die. They are buried alive and will come forth later in uglier ways." Freud saw suffering as inevitable, but he argued that when you avoid it, it mutates into something worse. Facing it consciously in therapy or in life transforms it from a curse into a kind of liberation. For the monks, suffering isn't just unavoidable, it's sacred. Buddhism begins with the recognition that life contains dukkha, suffering, dissatisfaction, impermanence. But instead of denying it, monks meditate on it. They sit in silence and let suffering reveal its lessons. To them, pain is not an enemy. It's the raw material of awakening. A monk might say, the wound is the place where the light enters you. The discomfort of hunger, the ache of sitting for hours, the sorrow of impermanence. All of it sharpens awareness and dissolves ego. So Jung tells us suffering is the labor pains of individuation. Freud warns, unprocessed suffering poisons the psyche. And monks remind us suffering is not just to be endured, but embraced as the path itself. Together they destroy modern illusions. No pill, no quick fix, no distraction can erase the reality that growth hurts. The very thing you've been running from, heartbreak, failure, loneliness, may be the doorway to becoming fully alive. Think about this. Some of the strongest people you know are not those who avoided pain, but those who went through it. The person who endured heartbreak and came out more compassionate. The one who faced failure and came back stronger. The one who sat in grief and discovered meaning on the other side. That's not coincidence. That's the law. Accepting suffering doesn't mean romanticizing it or seeking it out. It means refusing to let it make you bitter. Because once you realize pain is part of the deal, you stop wasting energy avoiding it and start using it to evolve. And that leads us to the next rule, one the modern world has almost completely forgotten. Here's the paradox of modern life. We are more comfortable than any humans in history, yet more restless, anxious, and fragile than ever. Why? Because we've confused comfort with strength. Jung, Freud, and the monks all knew what we've forgotten. Discipline is not punishment. Discipline is freedom. So rule number 4, build discipline like it's sacred. Think about it. Every culture, every wisdom tradition, every serious psychology agrees on this point. Without discipline, the mind becomes a slave to impulses. And when impulses run the show, life collapses into chaos. For Jung, discipline wasn't about rigid schedules or military drills. It was about the discipline of consciousness. To actually face your shadow, sit with suffering, and transform it into growth, you need inner order. Jung said, "In all chaos there is a cosmos, in all disorder a secret order." Discipline is what allows that inner order to emerge. It's what keeps you from getting lost in distractions or collapsing under your own emotions. Jung's version of discipline is psychological sovereignty, being the one in charge of your inner kingdom. For this, Freud was more blunt. He believed civilization itself rests on discipline. Without self-restraint, people would be ruled by what he called the pleasure principle, the infantile demand for immediate gratification. But discipline, he argued, forces us into the reality principle, the capacity to delay gratification, to accept limits, to work for long-term goals. He warned that when discipline collapses, people regress into chaos, addictions, compulsions, even violence. For Freud, discipline wasn't just personal. It was the glue holding society together. And the monks. For them, discipline isn't just important, it's sacred. Monks rise at dawn, they fast, they meditate in silence for hours. Not because they enjoy suffering, but because discipline sharpens the soul. To them, every act of discipline, every fast, every chant, every hour of meditation is an offering. It's a way of saying, I refuse to be ruled by my desires. In Buddhism, they call it sila, moral discipline. In Christianity, it's ascetic practice. Across traditions, the message is the same. Discipline is the path to freedom. So Jung shows us discipline as inner sovereignty. Freud shows it as the foundation of civilization. Monks embody it as sacred ritual. All three point to the same truth. Without discipline, the mind rots. With it, the mind becomes unstoppable. The tragedy of modern life is that we treat discipline like oppression, when in fact it's the highest form of self-respect. And that's the real secret. Discipline isn't about denying yourself. It's about building yourself. It's about creating a structure strong enough to carry your potential. Which leads us to the next rule, one that challenges everything you think you know about happiness. First off, if you've stayed with me this far, pause for a second and realize what that says about you. Most people would have clicked away the moment they felt uncomfortable. But you're still here facing the hard truths about life. That's rare. That's powerful. It shows you're not running from your inner self. You're working on it, and that deserves respect. So thank you for watching this far. And if you've gotten value, consider liking this video. It's a small action that helps us share wisdom with more people who, like you, are ready for something deeper. Now, let's talk about the most important rule of all. Rule number 5. Stop chasing happiness, start creating meaning. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. Happiness, as most people think of it, is a mirage. You can't get happiness the way you get a car or a promotion. You can't hunt it down. The more you chase it, the further it runs. Carl Jung understood this better than almost anyone. He saw that happiness is often a byproduct of meaning, not the other way around. Jung warned against the shallow pursuit of pleasure because it leaves the soul empty. What gives life depth, he argued, is the act of aligning yourself with your true self, what he called individuation. In his view, happiness is fleeting, meaning is eternal. Freud, of course, ever the pessimist, didn't even believe humans were meant to be happy in the first place. He said the best we can do is to transform suffering into something useful, to channel pain into love, work, and creativity. Freud's idea of satisfaction wasn't about smiling all day. It was about building a life that holds together even under pressure. And when you look at it that way, meaning is the only real foundation. Happiness is just the decoration on top. And then in the end, we have the monks. For them, the pursuit of happiness is the very definition of suffering. The Buddha taught that clinging to pleasure creates endless dissatisfaction. The way out? Stop grasping at happiness. Instead, root yourself in meaning, service, discipline, mindfulness, compassion. For the monks, joy arises when you stop demanding it. It sneaks in when you're too busy living with purpose to worry about whether you're happy. So here it is. Jung says happiness flows from individuation. Freud says happiness is fragile, but meaning endures. Monks say stop chasing it. It will arrive uninvited when you live with purpose. 3 very different traditions, all pointing to the same truth. Happiness isn't something you capture. It's something that happens when you stop chasing and start building a meaningful life. And think about it. What kind of person do you want to be remembered as? Someone who chased smiles and distractions? Or someone who lived with meaning, purpose, and depth? You already know the answer. That's why you're still here. That's why you're different. So if this resonated with you, take a moment, subscribe, not just to support the channel, but to mark this moment for yourself. A moment where you chose meaning over distraction. And if you want to keep going, check out the other videos on this channel. They'll open your eyes to psychology and philosophy in ways that can help you navigate life with confidence and clarity. Because at the end of the day, wisdom isn't about knowing everything. It's about living by the truths that matter. And now, you know where to start.